If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello all, this is Alan, and you are listening to my latest Bailey's Books column. This time we have 5 books for you. I believe they would mostly fall into the fantasy column, but a couple of them are mixed genre. We have 2 shorter works, novellas, I guess, and 3 full novels. So I did make some changes from what I originally had intended to do. I had told you I was going to continue reviewing Alan Stroud's books straight through till the end, but over the holidays, I ended up just catching up on a bunch of stuff that's been sitting around the house. So I will be getting back to that in the next review. In fact, I'm already reading the next novella in that series. So just wanted to let you all know in case you were looking for those. So anyway, I am now going to start this column with the only strictly science fiction novel of the bunch. Our first novel is Jubilee by Stephen K. Stanford, published by Flame Tree Press in 2023. This one's been sitting on my TBR for a while. Not because I didn't want to read it, I've purely been overwhelmed with the things I've been reading, and it kept getting pushed back. You know how it is. But finally, with the holiday, I got caught up and was able to read it, and I'm glad I did. This book is labeled as an intergalactic mystery sci-fi romp, and it's all of those things. However, the focus is really on the sci-fi romp aspect. The story starts out with 2 cops, partners, going to a man-made planet called Jubilee in a neighboring universe to pick up the body of an important politician. Jubilee is basically the Las Vegas of the universe, but with fewer rules. Also, I should point out, it's not in the same universe or dimension or whatever as the story, but a different one. The whole explanation of how Jubilee is in a different universe than the rest of the story is intentionally vague and cartoonish, clearly poking fun at the idea of parallel universes. Anyway, when they get there, the cops realize things are not as they should be, and they are delayed on Jubilee for several days. When they get back to their home universe, things have changed. And that's where the story really picks up. Now, for clarity, let me add that they don't accidentally end up in a different universe or something like that. It's just that political events have changed over the few days that they were stuck. Jubilee takes the reader back to tropes of 60s and 70s science fiction and uses them to poke fun at the modern world, especially toxic masculinity, religious zealots, and fascism. While I never had a laugh-out-loud moment, I definitely had a few chuckles. The story was enjoyable, if a tad uneven at times. But that said, the character's adventure zoomed along at a quick pace most of the time, leaving me interested to see what would happen next. Pick this up if you like humorous SF, light reading, and action-packed, if silly, adventure. Okay, next on our list is Cryptid Bits by Jess Sims, published by Last Pick Books in 2024. I found this book at last year's Confluence, which is the oldest running speculative fiction conference in Pittsburgh. And full disclosure, I'm on the board of that organization this year. For folks in the future, the year is 2025. I was walking through the dealer room and ended up talking to the author. Long story short, I found out that the book was blurbed by podcast friend Rick Claypool, whose newest book is actually next on this review column. So obviously, my interest was piqued, and I purchased a copy. The book is a very tiny volume, perhaps half the page size of a trade paperback, and only about 70 pages long. The back of the book describes it in the following way. The brownies are on strike, a dragon is running for the State House of Representatives, and hipsters of all species want to live in the fairy district. This is the story of cryptids and humans living in the same world, one where it's not as obvious as you might think to figure out who around you is a monster, which is a pretty good description of the book. I would also add that much of the book is written in an epistolary manner, much of which are review websites, news articles, online comments, but also like interviews and gossip heard around the town. The book focuses on social justice issues, using monsters as a stand-in for various marginalized groups. It also focuses on workers' rights too. I could see this book taking place in the same universe as Cadwell Turnbull's No Gods, No Monsters series, but with a Welcome to Night Vale delivery. Pick this up if you like monsters as citizens, epistolatory work, and humor. Okay, next on our list, Skull Slime Tentacle Witch War by Rick Claypool, published by Anxiety Press 2024. This is one of those reviews where I struggle to understand where to start. Claypool's writing has always been a blend of diametric opposites. Zany cartoonishness mixed with a depressing reality that often mirrors our own. Sometimes it makes me wonder what is actually ridiculous. Characters that have a corncob for a head, or the unfortunate situation we find ourselves in the real world. This time, Rick's story revolves around the characters Tentacle Head and Skullface, two mutants who look just the way their name describes them. Slop, a slime creature that is actually made of many smaller organisms who subscribe to a socialist perspective. Abomination, and that's abomination with an exclamation mark, a baby that has quote-unquote brownish soda that constantly pours from its face holes, as well as a legitimately scary witch, Oogus Boogus. Tonally, the book veers between hilarity, sadness, and ghastly horror. It's not a combination for everyone, but I really think this cartoon allegory is a masterpiece of bizarro fiction. Claypool has leveled up, for sure. Somehow you are made to feel for these wildly strange characters and the absurd circumstances they find themselves in. And despite it all, their cartoonish behavior is also relatable. By this point, you are probably wondering what actually happens in the story. Much like the other aspects of the novel, it can be hard to describe. I'll try to describe the crux of the story as best as I can. Through various circumstances, Skullface and Tentacle Head, who are neighbors, become friends. Then Skullface finds the baby he calls Abomination. From there, things get worse and worse for the main characters until they are eventually drawn to the witch's house looking for answers. And then into a greater conflict, of which I will not spoil. At times, events are nearly random or make about as much sense as any Looney Tunes episode, but other times you can see Claypool driving to an underlying point. Pick this one up if you like unconventional fiction, have a strong stomach, and need more indie authors in your life. I guess for that last one, that could be almost all of these books, actually. Next on our list is Coyote Run by Lilith Saintcrow, published by Horned Lark Press, February 25th, 2025. This story takes place in a near-future North America that is divided by civil war, with more or less the western half falling to fascist powers. There's no map or anything, so that's just a guess. But there are some places named enough that you can kind of get an idea. Anyway, this world also contains shifters who are basically were creatures. The fascist half of the country echoes the Nazis, flavored with a North American religious zealotry and technological backwardness. The story follows two women shifters and a pet robot named Chicken. Coyote, the eponymous character, is a quote-unquote runner who guides people across the fascist border back to the feds, or the non-fascists, although, frankly, they don't sound much better than the fascists. The other character, Margie, is a mechanic. The story starts with Margie paying Coyote to find and save her sister, who is in a concentration camp. This story is non-stop action and quite a bit of fun. The plot moves quickly, with a lot of rather gruesome action. Saintcrow spares few details in the bloody battles that ensue throughout the story. Also be aware that there is a torture scene in the book. However, the author does a pretty good job walking the line between too much torture and enough to understand the impact to the characters. Speaking of characters, they are very well done. I really enjoyed them. Both are very interesting in their idiosyncrasies. And what seems to be a little will they, won't they type of romance also starts to pop up as the story moves along. I do wish there was a little more time for character development, but this is a short one. However, this book does seem set up for a sequel, so make sure you go buy a copy so we can get that too. I want to add very quickly here, this is the first book I've read that mentions COVID, so thank you to Saintcrow for doing that. Much appreciated. This story pulls no punches. Pick this one up if you hate fascists, enjoy were creatures, and enjoy reading about near future dystopias. Okay, last one on the list here. This is Tempest Blades, The Root of Hope by Ricardo Victoria, published by Shadow Dragon Press 2024. This is the fourth and final installment of the Tempest Blades series. If you missed previous reviews of the book from this series, I'd describe them as a mashup of Final Fantasy, anime, and superheroes. This book starts a couple years after the previous novel, giving the characters a chance to live off-screen and provide further nuance to their lives and the plot. In this novel, all of the adventures of the previous three come to a head, capping off the adventures of all the characters in a world-shaking, dramatic fashion, as you might expect. As before, you can almost feel the characters' added levels since the last book. And they continue to level up as the story progresses. Alan, you say? They were fighting godlike beings in the third volume. Indeed they were, and they continue to fight even greater foes in this one. Victoria does not shy from high-powered adventures. This is the guy you want to run those level 20 D&D characters that you've been wanting to play for so long. Victoria makes time between the battles to continue his study of mental health, and especially depression. Something I can appreciate in a time like this. So, is there more of the same? I think the answer is yes and no. All the stuff I've already mentioned exists in the first three books, but I do think there are some differences. For one, I really felt Victoria's Mexican heritage reveal itself more in this story than the previous installments. Obviously, this takes place in a completely made-up world, but if you look in the right places, you can see it. Secondly, I'd say the story has more of a sadness to it. You can tell that Victoria himself is sad the adventure has to end. However, as with all the stories in the series, a sense of hope pervades the work. This book provides a suitable ending, just epic enough to cap off the story. So, before I sign off on this review, I have heard that there is a book of short stories that may be coming, also taking place in this same world, as well as the makings of an RPG too, which I got to actually playtest a little bit for. That was kind of cool. As of right now, it is unknown how or if the RPG will be published. Victoria is also working on a horror comedy mashup that I will review if I can get a copy. Pick up Tempest Blades, The Roots of Hope, if you like high-powered adventure, undefinable genre, and a series that actually ends. And that's all for today. Remember to rate and review us if you like what you're hearing. Thanks.